The hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network have voted, and once again, Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This upcoming hockey season will be my 10th season doing digital hockey content, my 4th as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network where we've got your team covered every single day. And today's edition of Locked On Oilers is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So, my friends, we are here for a 27 to 29 minute Connor McDavid glaze session. I will start out by laying out the case, the skill set, the tools, what makes Connor the best player in the world today. After that, in our second segment, we will pivot to talking about the stats, the regular season, the postseason, the accolades. And then in our final segment, we will tie a bow on today's show by diagnosing McDavid's place in the culture, in the long lineage of the great Canadian hockey player. To start out, I remember the first Connor McDavid highlights I ever saw. They were during the intermission of a New York Rangers game. And whenever there aren't a lot of games on a given night for them to do live highlights during intermission, they'll show highlights from the occasional junior game, occasionally a high school game in the Northeast if it's of note to the region. But I remember seeing McDavid in a very weird yellow Erie Otters jersey. I'm wearing an Erie Otters t-shirt under this hoodie, as a matter of fact. And when I think about McDavid, when it comes to separating Connor, when it comes to what makes him the best player in the world, it is a one of one toolbox. It is his ability to make the game look easy. And I've told this story on the show a number of times, but a couple of years ago, right out of COVID, fall of 2021, I went to the Rangers home opener with one of my friends who's a casual hockey fan. He watches probably one game a week, checks in every now and then, asks me a lot because I watch every game like a sicko. And we went opening night. The Rangers made a lot of transactions that offseason. They brought in Ryan Reeves, Barclay Goodrow, Sammy Blais, and he was asking me who out there on who's new should be noticeable. Who should I notice? And Reeves happened to be out there on the ice. And I said, look at the guy who doesn't look like a professional athlete. And the difference between the bottom of the barrel, the worst guys in the NHL, like a Ryan Reeves, like a Matt Rempe, and a Connor McDavid, every single time Ryan Reeves goes over the wall, it looks like he is fighting for his life to stay out there. When Connor is out there, it is the most effortless, beautiful hockey imaginable. It is quite simply like he walks on water. He moves with such fluidity and such effortlessness. It is hard to describe what it looks like to the trained eye. You know, I've often said it looks like his stick and the puck are extensions of his body as if they were appendages, and that's why he's able to manipulate things so well. But for me, other than just the raw foot speed, and I think the foot speed tells you a lot, because there are plenty of fast straight line skaters in the NHL. You put Jack Hughes, Kirill Kaprizov, Nathan McKinnon in a straight line foot race, Mattias Janmark's pretty quick. The difference between that straight line speed of an elite player and Connor's specifically is his ability to process. And I've often likened it to the Matrix. I've likened it to the limitless pill that Bradley Cooper takes in that movie, where everything kind of slows down for you because Connor is so fast, because Connor is so intelligent. Everything happens around him in slow motion. And because he's moving so fast, because he processes so fast, it puts him in the unique position of having the elite physical skills to complement that mind. And look, I've been very adamant. I think Connor's going to age incredibly well because of that mind, because of the way he sees the ice. But in conjunction with each other, it's borderline unfair. When you think about Connor's ability to create zone entries for himself, to create zone entries for his line mates, to drive the net, to facilitate, to draw defensive attention, to play make, and then to score, Connor is the complete package. And yes, there will be people who say he doesn't play hard enough defense, he's not physical enough, they prefer Nathan MacKinnon because he's willing to hit people. That's great. All of that stuff is cute. This is the best hockey player I have ever seen. I have been very fortunate, and I text my friends quite often whenever the Oilers are here in the Northeast. I often like to go. They're playing the Devils, Rangers, and Islanders in short order early in October, and I would like to go to all 3 games, and I'm working on that right now. TV almost does him a disservice because it looks even easier for him in person. His ability to manipulate every single aspect of the game by himself is truly remarkable. And it's not just that he sees the game 2 or 3 steps ahead. He plays the game 2 or 3 steps ahead. It is his ability to have a gravitational pull. And that's what I describe it as. He is such a threat offensively that opponents all centralize around him, and he pulls 2, 3, sometimes even as many as 4 defenders onto him, and that creates so much open space for his line mates. When he's out there with Leon, there's nothing you can do. It is the essence of pick your poison defensively, because if you try and cheat towards taking away Leon's one-timer, Connor's just going to dive bomb the net with his jitterbug move, and you're cooked. It is as indefensible a player as I have ever seen in this sport. And the last point I wanted to make on Connor, as far as just the skill set and the tools, he never complains. And look, I know there is an expectation that the star player does his job. He shows up, plays his butt off, doesn't it? Connor has been lumped in with some pretty stinky wingers over the years, and he has elevated whoever he has played with. He brought Zach Hyman, and look, I'm a big fan of Zach Hyman's game. I'm not saying he is stinky. But when I think of the Zach Kassians of the world, when I think of the Milan Lucic's of the world, yeah, Connor's had to drag some rough teammates along against good competition. And what separates Connor for me, to wrap up, is the package. It's all together. It's not just being a great shooter, a passer, a skater, a playmaker. Connor is great at every aspect of this game. And his ability to play at such a tempo and see the ice so well is unheard of. Just being very blunt. To have those 2 skill sets to the degree he has shouldn't be possible. And that's really the last point I wanted to make before we take our first break. A guy should not be able to be this good at everything. There's usually defects. Guys, they reach a certain point in their development, even when they're a kid, and they recognize, well, I can't get away with that anymore, or my backhand's not good enough, or my pass, or Connor can do it all. There is not a hole in his game, and he has put together some of the best stats of this era. And frankly, I think the stats make it even more clear just how much better he is than the field. We are going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, and we're going to dive into why Connor McDavid's been the best player in the world for a long time.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Because right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use on the FanDuel app. I love using FanDuel because it makes however I want to play easy. If you don't want to pick the game and you want to do player props, FanDuel has it. If you feel the vibe shifting in the game underfoot, live betting makes it happen. Or if you're watching a game with your friends and you want to cook up a squad ride, same game parlays make it happen. FanDuel has one question for you. What are you waiting for? The NFL slate is decent this week. Tonight, headlined by 49ers Rams in what is a pretty important game in the NFC West, even though Brock Purdy will be out and we will likely see Mac Jones for the 49ers. Jackson Dart's second start for the Giants. The Giants down the 1.5 point favorites on the road down in New Orleans. And then really good game in the NFC West. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading up to Seattle, where Seattle is 3-point home favorites. For all that and more, visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today, and get a chance at those $300 in bonus bets. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this edition of Locked On Oilers as we are walking through Connor McDavid as the best player in the world as voted on by the Locked On NHL hosts. So full transparency, yes, I voted for Connor first overall. We filled out these ballots at the beginning of September. Every host on the network, so if there is a show or a channel, I should say, that has two hosts, both of them were invited to vote. Connor McDavid won, and I think the numbers make it even more transparent. So Connor McDavid's career 82-game average season is 42 goals, 83 assists, 125 points. He does that on 277 shots on goal. He shoots 15%, and he does that in 21.44 per game. I want to pull up McDavid's numbers from last year to illustrate a point. Connor missed a decent number of games in the regular season last year. Most games he had missed in a couple seasons last year, McDavid. Only 67 regular season games last year, the fewest in a full season since 2019-20, even though that season was only 72 or 73 games. That was paused because of the pandemic. Connor played 67 games. In those 67 games, he had 26 goals, 74 assists, 100 points. There were people saying McDavid had a bad year last year. Run that through your head. Somebody who was over a point per game, was almost a point and a quarter, point and a third per game, was told had a bad season last year. And we are talking about a one-of-one guy. And I understand that the expectations when you are this good are as high as they can be. I understand all of that. But at the same time, do you not understand how insane it is that a guy put up 100 points in 67 games? I mean, we're not that far removed from people discussing whether McDavid could hit 160 or maybe even 170 points in a season. If you'll recall, the first year under Jay Woodcroft, McDavid put up 64 goals and 153 points. 64 goals! Connor McDavid has everything in his bag. His ability to skate the way he does and play make the way he does puts him in the rarest of rarefied air. And we'll talk more about that in our final segment, so I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But these regular season numbers are ludicrous. These are far and away the best of this era. And for clarity, I did want to pull this up. What NHL player has the most points since 2015? And I want to tell you that McDavid, who, if you'll recall, his first season was 2015-2016. He got drafted summer 2015. Breaks his collarbone that rookie season. He only plays 45 regular season games. He finishes third in Calder Trophy voting. His first full season as a pro, McDavid plays 82 games. He goes 30 goals, 70 assists, 100 points. He wins the Hart Trophy, and he wins the Art Ross. His first full season in the NHL. In the meantime, in the 712 games he's played since, McDavid has racked up 1,082 points. The next closest player, Nikita Kucherov, has 976 points. McDavid has missed time. Don't get me wrong. That rookie season, that's probably another 20 or 30 points. You lose games because of COVID a couple times. In 2019-20, you lose 10-ish. In 2021, you lose 26. McDavid could arguably have another 70 points, another 60 points in that total of 1,082. Connor is going to have the chance, if he extends with the Oilers, to run down most of Wayne Gretzky's team records. I don't think it's out of the question that should Connor spend the duration of his career as an Oiler, that he'd have the chance to run those down. And look, I understand that these are not that important. I do want to emphasize that. I understand these career records aren't that important, but Connor McDavid's games played, he'll get there. The record is Kevin Lowe with 1,037. Connor's at 700 something. Goals, Wayne Gretzky has 583. Connor has 361. If he stays, he'll get there. Wayne Gretzky has 1,086 career assists as an Oiler. McDavid has 721. If Connor stays an Oiler, he could get there as soon as probably 2.5 years from now. 1,669 points is what Wayne Gretzky has all time as an Oiler. McDavid has 1,082. If Connor spends the remainder of his career in Edmonton, which I do still think is going to happen, I know I haven't been the most optimistic as of late, especially on the preview with the other Pacific Division hosts, but if Connor stays, he's going to run down Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky! Do you understand how crazy that is? Think about the fanfare. And look, I understand that Ovechkin breaking the goal record is something nobody ever thought would happen. And that was the all-time record, not the Oilers record. The fact that Connor is going to have a chance to run down Wayne Gretzky held Oilers records is ludicrous. We are talking about something we probably will never, ever see again. And look, there might be a guy, maybe Gavin McKenna. I don't think Macklin Celebrini, even though I think Celebrini's good. There might be a guy 10, 15, 20 years from now who has a chance. Connor is going to do it. It's just simply a matter of if he stays and compiles those stats as an Oiler, or if he goes somewhere else and launches an assault on that team's all-time records. And then real quick, in the playoffs, and I'm reading off my notepad here if you're wondering what I'm skimping at, in the postseason, 38 goals, 91 assists, 128 average points if we were to scale out his playoff performances to an 82-game scale. In the games Connor has played, and I want to read this number correctly just so I can be sure. Connor's played 96 career playoff games. In 96 career playoff games, Connor has 150 points. He does that with 282 shots on goal. He does that shooting 13.3%. Oh, and of course, he won the Conn Smythe on the team that lost the Stanley Cup final for the first time in 20 years when Jose Theodore did it for the Canadiens. The numbers, the awards, this is as good as it gets. There is an argument to be made that Connor McDavid can be the greatest player in the history of hockey. I think talent-wise, he is the most talented player in the history of hockey. And there will be people who are Gretzky guys, Lemieux guys, maybe Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr. The era McDavid plays in, the numbers he puts up, the circumstances, the challenges, it is beyond impressive. And speaking of beyond impressive, we are going to take our second and final break of today's edition. When we come back, we're going to talk about what it means to be the next guy in that lineage of great Canadian hockey players. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this edition of Locked On Oilers as we are talking about Connor McDavid being voted by the Locked On NHL hosts as the best player in the NHL. And look, these lists, they're fun. They're cute. They're good content. They get people involved. They trigger discussion. They are not the arbiter of all that is true or wrong with the universe. If Connor had finished second or third, I'd probably be singing a different tune. I'd be talking about how ridiculous it is, but that's neither here nor there. This is the guy. And that idea, the archetype of the great Canadian hockey player, it has a long through line. And talking about it in the cultural context, beyond being a hockey player, you think about what it meant to Connor to finally get to represent the Maple Leaf in international play in a tournament with stakes. I know he'd done some world championships. I know he did World Juniors, obviously, but the Four Nations face-off had the juice it did because the best players in the world were representing their countries. and it had some gravitas to it. And I know Connor will deflect as long as Sid is there, and I know Nathan MacKinnon and him are equals in the pantheon. I know culturally, significantly, they view each other as equals. I think you saw that in the reactions they had with each other after Canada won that game in overtime. Connor is in that lineage, and culturally, that comes with a lot. Being the great Canadian hockey player is a tall order to live up to. I mean, Sidney Crosby is, I would argue, maybe the fourth or fifth best player in the history of the sport, including the resume, including the accolades, not just on talent. And they're contemporaries. Connor and Sid have played against each other a ton since McDavid entered the league in 2015. But to have that handoff happen in real time is pretty surreal. And Sid is still a really good hockey player, don't get me wrong. I still think Sid is one of the 10, 15 best centers, probably one of the 25 best players in the world. I have no qualms about saying that. But for Connor to come in on Sid's coattails about 10 years later, Sid's first year 05, McDavid's first year 2015, to have this guy come in such short order, amongst contemporaries like Austin Matthews and Nathan MacKinnon, and still be this good, it is hard to fathom. And that's really where I get to when I'm talking about the cultural impact. It doesn't just mean the commercials, the sponsorships, the promotions. It means that Connor is inherently tied to the cultural identity of Canada. And I have long revered what makes Connor great. And it is so much more than the physical traits. And look, I know Connor really does mold himself after Sid as far as mentality, approach. I cite quite often the letter that Connor McDavid wrote to Sidney Crosby when he was 5 years old. Connor was 5 years old, and he asked his parents if they could write Sidney Crosby a letter when Sid was on Rimouski in the QMJHL. And Connor McDavid, as a 5-year-old, wanted his parents to help him ask Sidney Crosby how Sidney Crosby deals with pressure. Mind you, this is someone in kindergarten asking a 15-year-old, and I get it. When you are anointed, when you are 14 or 15, as the next guy, there is an expectation that you live up to that. When you're known to the hockey world as a 14 or a 15-year-old, and you're still 4 years away from playing in the NHL, there's an expectation that you are going to get there. And not only are you going to get there, that when you get there, you are going to be so good that a team was okay with flushing it away an entire season just to get you. In some cases, flushing away 2 or 3 or 4 seasons for the chance to take a player of this caliber. And look, I do think to some extent we have weeded out the entire bust. I don't think we will see anyone drafted first overall who is out of the NHL in 4 or 5 years ever again. After what happened with Nail Yakupov, I don't think we will ever see a player drafted first overall who's out of the NHL entirely 5 years into their career. Now, Alexis Lafreniere, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Owen Power, there's a scale here. And look at the conversation. And the reason I point this out and why I wanted to talk about it through this lens, look at the conversation around Connor Bedard last year. Connor Bedard is one guy. Connor Bedard is a child. Connor Bedard is on a god-awful hockey team. And you saw the vultures, the PK Subbans, the Mark Messiers, the Paul Bissonnets. You saw the vultures jumping on somebody who would be in college if they were a normal person. Oh, this guy doesn't play hockey right. How are the Blackhawks ever supposed to win? He is the only good player on his team. He has demonstrated the ability to be a pretty good hockey player at the NHL level as a teenager. Connor Bedard just turned 20 years old in July. Bedard's rookie season, 61 points in 68 games. Last year, 67 points in 82 games. And people talk about him like he isn't good at hockey. That's what I mean when I say the next guy living up to the expectations and then exceeding them. And then real quick to tie a bow on this idea, I have made this comparison quite a bit, especially over the last 2 years. Connor, LeBron, Bryce Harper, those are guys who, as teenagers, as kids, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, were anointed as the next guy. And all three of them have greatly exceeded any rational expectation of what they could be. LeBron is the most accomplished player in the history of basketball. And look, I know Bill Russell's got more championships. I know Michael Jordan never lost in the finals. LeBron's resume is unassailable. He is unquestionably the most accomplished. He is unquestionably the most talented. Now, if you prefer Michael Jordan, that's fine. I prefer Michael Jordan, the guy, culturally. I think Michael Jordan is cooler. I think he's got more aura. But look at what LeBron has accomplished. I look at Bryce Harper, who graduated high school early, went to junior college for a year so he could get drafted a year earlier, so he could get to the majors, and he got to the majors as a teenager. And then you look at Connor, who showed up as a teenager and won the Hart Trophy in his second full season as an NHLer. This guy did not just walk in the door. He kicked the door in, said, "Hi, Sid, I'm Connor. I'm the new guy." And he has not handed over the championship belt yet. And I struggle to think of a player who's going to take it. You might like Nathan McKinnon more. You might like Austin Matthews more. That's fine. You put me in a game for my life. And look, I have said it. Going into each of the last two elimination games in the Stanley Cup final each of the last 2 years, I know the Oilers have not won either of those games. There is not a hockey player on this planet I am taking before Connor McDavid in a game for my life. You might be a goalie guy. You might be a defenseman guy. God bless you. You can take Shesterkin. You take Cale Makar, Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, whoever. Chips are down. Game for my life. My team needs to win, or they're pulling the lever on the electric chair. You give me Connor McDavid. I'm going to feel good about it. I will see you guys in 3 hours when I get out of the chair and we win the game. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching over on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night in the lead up to the start of the season. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.